Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to sift through interesting sources and pull out the key insights for you, especially if you want to get up to speed quickly without, feeling totally swamped.
And today we're diving into Eastern philosophy. We're looking at a really interesting video from Iran.
Yeah, the goal is to unpack some of these big ideas, maybe ones that sound a little abstract at first glance.
Exactly. And see how they might offer some, well, surprisingly practical ways to think about personal growth, especially for, our English-speaking listeners looking for new perspectives on themselves and maybe the world.
Right. We're zoning in on two main figures today. First, there's Buddha and this idea of Muga, what's often called no self.
And then Nagarjuna, who comes later with his concept of ku. That gets translated as emptiness or maybe even fiction.
Fiction, interesting. Yeah, they sound heavy, maybe a bit philosophical, but we promise we'll try to break them down.
Yeah, make them relatable. Use some examples that hopefully land, regardless of your background with this stuff.
See how these Eastern concepts could potentially shift how you look at yourself, and maybe those worries that just seem to stick around.
Okay, let's jump in. Buddha. Probably a name most people recognize.
For sure. And what I liked about how the video presented him was, it wasn't just this distant spiritual figure. It felt like someone grappling with really human stuff.
Absolutely. We're talking, 2,500 years ago in India? And his backstory is pretty remarkable. He wasn't struggling initially.
Not at all, right? He was a prince. Luxury privilege. The video even mentions people thought he was, incredibly good looking. He had it all, supposedly.
He did. But despite all that perfection on the outside, he had this deep, angst, this searching.
Yeah, those big questions. What's it all mean? Who am I really? And I think that's something, you listening might connect with, that feeling of looking for something deeper.
And his reaction was, extreme. He didn't just sit and think about it in the palace.
No way. He left, gave it all up, became an ascetic.
And for 6 years, subjected himself to intense fasting. The video actually shows a depiction of him looking really emaciated. It shows the level of commitment.
But here's the really fascinating part the video highlights. Even after all that extreme self-denial, he didn't find some fixed, unchanging true self.
Right, that's crucial. Enlightenment didn't come from deprivation. It kind of challenges that Western idea sometimes, that just pushing harder, achieving more is the path.
Totally. The turning point was actually something quite simple, accepting a bowl of gruel from a woman.
Yeah, it's this powerful moment, a shift from extreme effort to receiving something, a different kind of understanding.
And that's when he supposedly reached enlightenment and understood this idea of Muga.
Muga, no self. So the video quotes Buddha saying something like, self is just illusion. Actually, this world is all connected. If you observe carefully, you will understand.
Now, that idea, no self, can feel really weird, especially coming from a more individualistic Western perspective, maybe.
It definitely can. But the video uses a great analogy to make it more concrete. Think about food.
Got it.
Our bodies are literally made from what we consume, right? You eat chicken.
Yeah.
Well, you're incorporating parts of that chicken.
Which ate grain, which grew in the earth.
Exactly. It traces back. It shows how interconnected we are physically with everything. Our actual physical selves are built from things that are fundamentally not us.
Okay. So there isn't this distinct, separate, unchanging me at the core. It's more like a collection of constantly changing parts borrowed from the world.
Precisely. And the video ties this directly to why we suffer. The argument is we suffer because we're desperately trying to build and hold on to this idea of a permanent, separate self.
In a world that's constantly flowing and changing.
Yeah, trying to build a solid stone wall to stop a river.
Oh, that's a good image.
The river life change, it's just going to keep flowing. It'll eventually break down the rigid wall, our idea of this fixed self. Resisting that flow is where the struggle comes in.
It makes sense. That clinging to how things should be or how I should be.
And there's a really down-to-earth example in there, too, about gray hair.
Oh, yeah.
The desire to stay young, to resist that change. So people dye their hair. And the video suggests that this fight against natural change, even on that small scale, can be a source of low-level stress.
Whereas accepting it might actually bring relief.
Maybe, yeah. A sense of ease. It challenges that constant pressure to maintain a certain unchanging image.
So for you listening, if you're caught up in that who am I spiral or maybe feeling stuck, the video kind of nudges you to try something just for a moment. Maybe try accepting where you are, who you seem to be right now, without fighting it or judging it so hard.
Just notice if that shifts anything, even slightly. It's not about suddenly becoming enlightened overnight.
Right, just a little experiment in perspective.
Okay, so moving on from Buddha, the video introduces this other major figure, Nagarjuna.
Nagarjuna, okay.
Lived maybe 700 years after Buddha. The video calls him like the king of rebuttals.
Huh. Like a master debater.
Yeah, it gives you a sense of his style. Apparently, by his time, Buddhist teachings had become, well, massive. Like 200 volumes of stuff.
Wow. Sounds overwhelming. Like information overload even back then.
Totally. And Nagarjuna's big move was to kind of cut through all that. He distilled it down to one core concept, ku.
Ku, which he said translates to emptiness or fiction.
Yeah, emptiness is common. But the video explains it more like, the world is all ku, meaning it's like a kind of fiction.
A fiction created by words. That sounds pretty out there.
It is a bit mind-bending. The example they use is simple but effective. Imagine just a plain circle shape, just a shape. But then you slap a label on it, write some text next to it. Suddenly it means something. It has qualities we project onto it.
Ah, so the reality we perceive isn't just raw data. It's shaped by the concepts and language we use.
Exactly. Our perception is constructed. And if the world is, in this sense, a kind of fiction built on words,
then maybe our worries, which are often tied to fixed ideas about things, are also less solid.
That's the implication of ku, yeah. If there's no fixed, unchanging essence to things, then worries about not having the right essence or things not being the right way, they lose their foundation.
Can you give an example?
Well, the video uses size. Is something inherently big or small?
No. It depends what you compare it to.
Right. You're big compared to an ant, small compared to a building. Big and small aren't fixed properties of the thing itself. They're relational concepts, part of the fiction we use to make sense of things.
Okay, I see. It's a label we apply based on context.
And they take it further into judging people, good versus bad.
Ooh, tricky territory.
Also a fiction, according to this view. They even mention a villain from a Japanese kids show, Bacon Man.
Right.
Apparently, even the villain points out, you need a villain for there to be a hero. The concepts depend on each other. They're constructed.
So these hard categories we use, maybe they aren't as absolute as we think.
That's Nagarjuna's point, basically. No inherent fixed personality, identity, individuality. It's all part of the construct, the ku.
Wow. So if I'm worrying about, say, not being good enough in a relationship or not having the right personality for a job.
From this perspective, you're worrying about maintaining a fixed thing that isn't actually fixed in the first place. The worry is based on an illusion of solidity.
That could actually be quite freeing, couldn't it?
That's the idea. If you're stuck on a problem, try reminding yourself. The self I'm so worried about isn't this permanent concrete statue. It's more fluid.
And maybe the problem itself or my reaction to it is also less fixed than I assume.
Exactly. It's about seeing the constructed nature of it all, which the video suggests can lead to a more positive, less burdened way of being.
Okay, these are definitely big ideas. They might take some digesting.
For sure. They're not simple concepts to just instantly get. But the video rightly points out, even just partially grasping them,
Just getting a little glimpse.
can actually provide some real relief from worry and anxiety.
And if this has piqued your interest, the video mentions the book. It's based on covers, what, 6 Eastern philosophies.
Yeah, 6 in total. And apparently presented in a way that's really engaging, even if philosophy isn't usually your thing. Sounds like a good next step if you want to explore more.
Definitely. And I like that the video creator shared a personal tip, too, something really practical.
Oh, yeah, the worry time thing.
Yeah, scheduling specific time just to worry rather than letting it bleed into everything. It shows how these bigger ideas can connect to, actual coping strategies.
A concrete takeaway.
And there was that one last little bit at the end I found really interesting. This idea about why we worry so much.
Ah, the evolutionary angle.
Yeah, that maybe humans develop this tendency to constantly scan for problems, to worry as a survival instinct way back.
Like if you didn't worry about predators or finding food in prehistoric time.
It might not last long. So maybe our brains are kind of hardwired for anxiety, even when the dangers today are different.
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? Puts a different spin on why worry can feel so persistent sometimes.
Definitely. So maybe something for you to think about as you go about your day. How might it change things if you started to see yourself as less solid, more fluid, more connected, maybe a bit more like that fiction mug Arjuna talks about.
Yeah, how might that affect how you face challenges or how you understand the people in the world around you?
Something to ponder for sure.
Ah.